we are always looking for talent. We're hungry for it. We're looking for the good story. We're looking for the next big actor. We're looking for the great actor. We're looking for talent, directors, writers. I just wish more women would just stop worrying about what someone would think or say and just come and work. Aha was my first film. Then there was Satyam. Then there was Manmadhudu, Mas, Sokade, Manam. These are all a set of films that I've been, involved in.
Are you a loser? Are you a freak? Do you need a lover? Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Don't bother me.
Welcome to another episode of Real Strugglers, where we talk to real filmmakers and actors about their struggles working in the chaotic world of films. Today, our guest is esteemed film producer and actor Supriya. So, Supriya, how did your journey start? I know you first started off as an actor. Were you keen on acting at that time? Oh.
I was. I was very keen on acting, and I thought I could act. And I would take granddad's shawls and play every drunken scene possible.
His scenes?
His scenes, yeah.
Okay.
His scenes. So yes, I was drawn to acting. And growing up in a household where granddad made being an actor look like a very nice job. Of course, we had not seen the hardships before, and we were only privy to what was later on in his life, and later on in his life when he became a superstar. So every morning he would leave for shoot by 7:30. He would come back home by 6:30, and I just assumed it was a job. So I think there was a certain naivete about the whole process of thinking that I could be one, could be an actor. At 17, I got an opportunity. 17, 18, I got an opportunity to act. So someone just came up and said, do you want to act? And I was like, okay. So that's how it started.
And did you do, since you come from a film background also, did you have certain exposure to learning how to act, or where did you pick it up?
Watching movies.
Watching
movies, watching Rekha, watching Smita Patil, and just thinking that, this is how acting looks. I loved Jayaprada, I loved Jayasudha, and I grew up in that era where characters also were there were a lot of very nuanced female characters written at that particular time. And I think I was influenced by those films. I thought it was something that most people, it's another profession. And I didn't realize that it was a special profession, or it was something that someone looked up to, or they had to work very hard towards. It didn't strike me at that time. So call it nepotism, call it privilege. At 17, I got asked. I just said, okay. And anything I know about acting has come from films.
And then when you did your first film, what was that experience like? Was what you went in expecting, did that completely change?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with acting. It was, I think I got reminded for the first time that I was a female, and there was a difference between being female and male.
And that wasn't a thing that was in your household?
No, never.
Ever?
My household, never. We grew up equal. Sumant and myself grew up equals. Opportunities were equal. We were never told you're a girl, so you can't do this, especially in my household. Grandfather was very female forward in that way. He wanted the women in his household to be able to do whatever they wanted. So I think when I got onto a set, I realized being a girl meant that there was a particular way I needed to look. And that those same rules didn't apply to my male counterpart. And that became very evident very quickly. Like, what are you wearing? Why are you looking dull? You need to look glamorous. And so that was the language, and I was not ready for that language then.
And did that put you off?
Got me scared.
Okay.
Got me scared, for sure.
Scared of, was it judgment, or was it
Judgment, of course. And being an actor in any time is difficult. Even now, it's very, very difficult. In fact, maybe more so now because of social media.
Yeah, more eyes on you.
Yeah, more eyes on you. But I think being an actor itself takes a lot of guts. Just takes a tremendous amount of guts to say, I'm putting myself out there, and you can like me or you cannot. You can like the way I look, you can like the way I act, or you cannot. And I can't control that judgment.
Yeah.
Right? So that's very scary.
And did you think about doing a second film after that?
I very quickly took advances from a number of films. And then very quickly I realized no, and so I went about going and apologizing to the producers and returning the money. So
You had to return all the money?
Of course, because I was very sure that I couldn't do the films.
Okay.
And I had taken advances thinking that I would do the next films. And I realized that I wasn't sure whether I would fit in. It was very clear that it was going to be what I'd imagined, and the reality was very different.
And would you, so then you never acted again till Gudachari?
Yes, still Gudachari, I never acted again. I got a couple of opportunities, but again, fear and not knowing what to expect. And also, again, then by that time, you're becoming a producer, right? You become a producer, or you've been working behind set for such a long time that now all your naive, it's gone. The certain amount of innocence that you would have had before is gone, and you preempt things. So I never did, no.
And then how did the production journey start?
Because I was restless. I just couldn't I'm just one of those people who can never sit down and do nothing. The movie was happening. I knew very quickly that I was not going to continue this journey, but I needed something. So immediately after that movie, I was like, what can I do? And I was like, the family needed someone to go and look after the studio. So I said, let me start. And then I remember Nag telling me, Chinmama telling me that we bought the rights of a Tamil movie. There's a movie called Aha, which was a success in Tamil. We just bought the rights. Do you want to go and look at producing it? I do not know how they thought that a 19-year-old could produce a film. But then I realized that I'd been on set all my life.
Yeah.
So it didn't even strike me that there was something to learn. I just knew what my dad did. I knew what my uncles did. I knew what happened in the studio. So it just came a second nature that I started.
So did you, when you were doing this first film of yours that you were producing, did you have someone guiding you through it?
No.
Or it was like you were thrown into the water?
I was thrown into it, and I would just pick up things I would go to set I would go to the to location or come to the studio at 5:30, where all the drivers would come, take their 100 rupees or 150 rupees for the day of petrol, and I would give them the program saying, go to this guest house, Bhanupriya Garu will be there, go then pick her up, drop her back here, and I would give the programs. So being a producer for me was literally doing all the work. And I never thought that a particular kind of work was not my work.
Right.
As being a producer, I always thought that was, you have to do everything. It's yours.
And do you still look at production that way?
If I did production, I would only do it like that.
Okay. So what do you mean if you do? I mean, you still
Meaning that
do
production where it is yours, you own it and you say, I do it. See, because when you're doing production, I've done production for various kinds of films, stars, non-starers, worked with for the studio. Certain dynamics, the productions have to go on. But film production, to be a true producer, is for the person to know the story they're making, have some creative hold or input on that and guidance, and then to be able to hold all the technicians you get to that vision constantly. Now, at that time, a set had 50 people, 100 people max. Today, they have 300 people. It's a very different environment. Being a producer is being the emotional owner of a film, whatever that may entail or require you to do.
So when you say you have to have some sort of creative hold in what you're producing, what role can you give me an example of how that would apply?
Ideally, I think when we made films like Aha was my first film, then there was Satyam, then there was Manmadhudu, Mas, Sokade, Manam. These are all a set of films that I've been involved in. To listen to the story, and when you say hold, it's to say, it's not control. Hold is very different to control. Hold is to understand the vision that the directors come with. You obviously like that person's vision. You like the story that person has narrated. And to constantly ensure that we're staying within that vision.
Right.
Because it's very easy for creative people to get pulled away. It doesn't mean getting pulled away is wrong. I think some of the best work happens when you get pulled away as well.
And so when you are also like looking for new projects to work on, what are the initial setups that get difficult? Like at least in your earlier films, like there's a lot of learning on the job also when you start off, right? You probably made mistakes that... so what were those kind of things that you kind of didn't learn from when you were observing your own family producing projects that came to you firsthand?
Firsthand, it was just the amount of work that goes behind making a film. And I think sitting and watching, whether it was the actors who were stepping in or even people like my dad and all who were the producers, they're still up on the ladder, you see. And then you realize for even one decision to get activated and become an action on set, there's 3, 4, 5 days of work going on. Somebody's doing that work.
Yeah.
And that is something that amazes me about how people just pick up on something and it's going on and it's going on, and the higher ups never really realize how much effort went into it. A location. I want to shoot at Charminar. As simple as that. Very simple.
Nightmare.
It's an absolute nightmare as far as...
Crowd control.
No, start with permission.
Permissions, yeah.
Start there. And then how many, for 2 weeks, a person is sitting on that, going around trying to figure out the permissions. And this is with people who are very, very experienced.
Yeah.
You know, but there's somebody on it morning, afternoon, evening. And we just land up there and we say, okay, we paid the money for the shoot.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not how that. So I think just what amazes me is the intricacy and detail of work that is expected to happen to make something unreal happen. See, you know, film is fake, right?
Yeah.
It's fake. You're creating everything which is fake. How difficult is it to fake something? It's bloody difficult.
Yeah.
That's something I never realized.
And with conviction.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the conviction, then you've lost your audience right there.
Yeah, no. And also, see, I think, you know, I hear these things that, oh, with time now, people are watching more, people are getting more aware, all that. I'm guilty of saying the same things. But the more I think about it, I feel like people who watch something always know whether they like something or not. That particular person. Now, is it the majority? Is it what is the percentage of those people? But I think it's just watching something beautiful. Did it touch you? Was it very beautiful? Did it resonate with you in some way? That's why it's become easy now that with all these language things, that people are watching Korean dramas, people are watching other language things. It's not because we've become more aware.
It's because of the exposure also.
It's just because it's coming in.
Yeah.
But I think a viewer has always known.
What
Has
they like.
always known whether they like something or not.
Because your tastes also could vary. When you get films that don't kind of necessarily resonate with your own sensibility and taste, how do you know if that's something that would work in the box office, something that's a good option for you to produce?
I don't think you can do that. You have to have an inherent liking to something, which speaks quite clearly, whether it's the story, whether it's to say that, oh, something is going to go work in box office and therefore I'm going to do it. I'm not sure in the long run. Yes, you may have a one-off thing here and there, but I don't think that's the gauge any creative person should use. You have to fundamentally like what you're doing.
And that also kind of makes the job worth doing. Otherwise, working 18, 20 hours for something you don't like is
No,
not...
see, in anything creative, the result is never guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right? You can work your ass off and...
It's difficult to make a bad film also.
Yes, yes.
Like,
No,
right.
Vicky, so the thing is the process has to somehow be fulfilling or you have to enjoy it. Otherwise, it can become a nightmare. If I see privilege, my privilege is anything in the industries, it is the privilege of choice in the saying, I don't have to do this. If anything, that's the only thing. Because I know most people starting out have to take whatever work they get.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think to say that I don't need to make that film, it's okay, nothing is going to happen to me if I don't make it, itself is privilege.
Also understanding a certain business model in terms of producing. Not all films recover its money, not all films are going to be hits, but how do you kind of divide your risk over a span of maybe 5 years when you're thinking of the projects you're going to take on?
See, I think the fundamental, I don't think you can. I don't know if we are still at a stage or we will ever be at a stage where we know how popular or how viable something's going to become. You just do it with a gut feeling, right?
Right.
And then you take you put your methods to the madness to say, okay, I'll control the budgets or I will do this efficiently or I will hire the right people for it and things like that. I'm not sure you can forecast that. I'm not sure you can create it either. And I think so when you pick and when you hedge, I think fundamentally, is it something that you would like to be part of? One, can you handle the financial risks that may come with it? And each project is different. So
Right.
can you handle that? Is that something that, okay, if I'm going to lose X amount of money, is it okay?
Correct. You shouldn't, you
yeah,
can't shut shop because of one mistake.
So I think, and there are people who shut shop because of one film.
Yeah.
And there are people who arrive because of one film,
Yeah.
right? I think that is the madness and that's what attracts people to this industry.
What kind of role does a like, do you play in raising the finances for a film? Is it something that comes in-house, or is it something that you have to go out and raise based on the project?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So I think that we are still a certain mix of traditional producers where always a certain amount of our money is put in just because that's just the way we've made film. Or that's the way I've known my father make film. That's the way I've seen my granddad make film. They've all, and then you would have financiers. You would have your regular financiers. But this is again a very old model. See, today you have the studios in Bombay that have come in that finance firms. But if you look at it, South Indian cinema is still very individual driven.
Even in the OTT space?
OTT space, not so much, because you have to get okayed by an OTT to do it, and you're nothing but a producer.
But what about in the licensing space of OTT?
See, the licensing space, the producer will have to do it themselves and license it and be okay for being long-term in the game, which is ideal, actually. It's the ideal way of producing content because you believe in it. But how do you get the pockets to keep producing stuff that you're only going to get very little back on? How does that model make sense if you don't have volume?
Because OTT only has one revenue source, right?
Yes.
It's only the platform.
It's only the platform. And also if you're licensing it, see, if you had content like HBO and say, okay, now we'll create our own OTT. That's another reason why it's come up. But as independent producers, how much content can you make? And how will you keep licensing it?
But also, since you gave the example of HBO, even for HBO to do what they're doing, HBO has been in the production game of making their own content for decades now.
They've been doing it for such a long time and they've always licensed. So they were waiting for all their licenses to complete and come back before they could start their own.
HBO Max, yeah.
Yes, but otherwise, how many people, you're not going to have that much content.
Correct.
So you need independent people to create it. But if you need independent people to create it, then the OTTs are the platforms that are deciding the numbers. So you get the producer is nothing but a hired production agent.
So it's become more of line production in that space.
Yes.
Where you're just executing the project.
Yes. See, because the OTT platforms have the data of how the consumptions are going, and they will not share data with you. They know what they want. They know why they want it. They know what price they want it. And if you want to get your story told, you have to follow their rules.
Is that something that has taken time to adapt to the new way of working with them, or is it just a part of what you guys are doing right now?
There's definitely some amount of you have to adapt because that's a very different way of working. That's a very corporate, systemic way of working. We haven't created enough writers who understand long format writing. And again, at the same time, if somebody tells you at the end of every show, I need to have something that I need to come to, and they give you these structures, that's also not necessarily the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of creativity, right?
There's no right
There's
or wrong.
no right or wrong. So is someone going to tell you? But it's very easy for a person who's sitting in a place of power to tell you that this is wrong.
Yeah.
And you have no choice but to take it. I don't think the OTT space is as democratic as it should be. Theatre watching is extremely democratic because you can go there, you can say, I like it or not. It's your 200 rupees or 100 rupees that's paying someone.
But the barriers to entry into that are probably higher though, right?
Huge.
Because even to make like a small Telugu film, for example, like even if you get like maybe even 30 screens to play a film, to be able to get to that point is only
but then what's the same with OTT? How many OTT platforms are going to pick you up?
Yeah, and if you already shot it, they know that.
If you shot it, trust me, they will not touch it with a yardstick.
Yeah, and then even they do, they'll pay you peanuts
They'll pay you peanuts for it. So why would you want to be in that thing?
And so in terms of the difficulties in producing now, everyone has ups and downs now. How do you navigate the downs and what have the downs been as a producer for you?
I probably come from a little, again, naive way where I always believed a story is king. The story is what's going to decide everything. And I think as you get a little more experience, you realize that's not the way it is. You need the right cast for it. You need the right directors for it. And there's so many N number of things that you need for it. What's been difficult for me to navigate, the story becoming less important and the personalities becoming more important. And it's the reality. If you get Mr. Chiranjeevi into a character, he's going to play it differently. If you're going to get somebody else into it, they're going to play differently. But it's not that they're playing it just differently and you're getting a different story, But it's also because they are hired, the story needs to also change because they are bigger than the stories. So I think that's been a bit of a tussle for me. Also because there's also this thing of commercial cinema. Commercial cinema needs this. Commercial cinema needs that. I only know good cinema and cinema I didn't enjoy. That's all I know.
Yeah.
So I find it a little difficult to navigate that space where they'll say, oh, you need to have this or you need to have that.
But who says that?
It's all around us, right? It's all around us where we're saying, okay, if it's a commercial film, you need to have 4 songs at least. My story is not calling out for songs.
Yeah.
Now, does it mean that it's not going to be watched because it's not going to be commercial? That means, should I make it or shouldn't I make it? These are things which really confuse me.
Right.
Like, you hear something good, but then I also know the value of it. Who are you also making film for?
Right. Knowing your audience.
Knowing your audience. Now, do we really know our audience?
That's actually a good question. Do we know our audience? Because there's also a huge disconnect. India is it's a massive country. And like, even if you take like just Telangana and Andhra, for example, like culturally, there's so much difference between like a small town person over here and so someone who's grown up in like a Hyderabad, Vijayawada or Vizag.
Now, if you may have noticed now, since the regions of the states of Telangana and Andhra have formed, the cultural divide through the language has become so clear. We never used to make film with so much Telangana in them before because the makers were Andhra. And now you're able to see that the audience also saying, hang on, this is this is that. In good interest of keeping all your audience entertained and not trying to tell them that you're different, but more in the way of unifying them, you're coming off to a neutral Telugu now, if you notice.
Okay.
See, for example, some of our big films, whether they were Pushpa, it was done in a very particular colloquial theme. Then there were some films, Balagam and all, were very Telangana oriented. Do those films get understood in Andhra? Possibly not. And this happened to me when I started understanding this difference when I made a film called Rajanna. It was a very Telangana-centric film of a Telangana hero.
Okay.
It didn't open in Andhra. It just didn't open. No one connected with it because our songs were written in a certain amount of Telangana and all of that. This was, I'm talking about 12, 13 years ago. So that was when I had to understand this cultural nuance, this language nuance. I don't know what it means when they say fast. She's very fast, he's very fast. I don't have that in my language, but I hear it. I hear it from people who are the audience. So what is fast? That's when we had to understand the words that they mean, what they mean. And it's very different to what we think. And that must be different from region to region, social strata to education levels to so much.
When you are making a film, is it important to be in a neutral space or is it fine to like become more Andhra or more Telangana in terms
Again, that's a choice, right? It's just a choice of what that story needs. Does that story require it to be culturally rooted? It'll call out, you know, and there's no line for that. But then you have to be mindful that because you're picking something, it may be an advantage or a disadvantage.
And is that something that's also a tricky thing to work with in terms of the films you're producing? Do you find it easier to produce films that are hero-driven rather than story-driven?
No. They all have their own, they're different animals. Because when you have a very popular actor or a director, automatically a film sells. Regardless of what you're making, there is a certain minimum to it, or as we used to think. But the challenges are just very different. Yeah, filmmaking challenges
vary from.
And I don't think there's any film without a challenge.
Yeah. In terms of now aspiring filmmakers who want to get into filmmaking, how important is a film school versus a practical training?
Just start working, and I know it sounds really silly, but to just say getting yourself onto a film set and starting there in some format. And then if you have the privilege of going to film school, getting some skill sets, just getting a few things together because film has become a lot more technical than it used to be. So getting some skill sets that are very required, that others won't have and that are needed. So the guy who's doing, I don't know, but Rajamouli Garu once said that he was the guy who was always available. That's how he got, he used to direct television serials, right? But he was the guy who was always there. when they needed someone for something, he was always the one there. And that's how he actually ended up getting the attention to get his story heard and going on to making a film.
That's also tricky, because now for someone who hasn't, like if you're at least in a city that has a film industry, like Hyderabad, you may know, if you've grown up here, you may know someone who's worked in films or has some sort of connection to films. So you may be able to get a lead. But now a lot of people do come from like smaller cities that don't have a necessary film industry that exists over there. For them, where do they kind of navigate into getting onto these sets?
That's tough. See, one thing I can tell you, I can't speak for the other side, but I can tell you, sitting where we are sitting, we are always looking for talent. We're hungry for it. We're looking for the good story. We're looking for the next big actor. We're looking for the great actor. We're looking for talent, directors, writers. It is not structured, and it will help to have some skill sets that you develop, that you say you can do. Then it is getting yourself onto a film set or a television shoot or anywhere else, that you start getting yourself. How does one become a painter?
Pick up a paintbrush and get a canvas.
Yes, I think that's what it is. How do you become an artist? How do you become a theater actor? How do you become anything creative?
Just start doing it.
Just start doing it.
Yeah.
And and I think the biggest skill set, that muscle that one has to build to be in the industry, is to be okay to fail. And I think if you kind of get good at it, your success will come.
It's also like, it's a skill that you kind of have to nurture also, because you make one short film, it may not be good. Your second short film, you learn from what went wrong in the first one, and you'll kind of keep growing. If you don't keep kind of building on your own skill sets by practically working towards it, you're not going to kind of improve,
True.
right?
Yeah. But see, that's the thing, right? They say your creativity peaks by the time you're 35, from wherever you are to when you're 35. Now, that's when you're adventurous. Before that, then after that, common sense and practicality start hitting.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to lie to anyone saying it's easy. Being in any creative field and trying to make a living from that creative field is tough. How do you do it? There is no particular rule or system you can follow. There is no path. It's just, do you have it in you or not to follow a path that is just going to be yours? My experience is never going to be yours.
Yeah.
I can't tell you tomorrow morning when you're going to walk into office, this may happen. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. That is true. Like you can't predict anything in any part of life also, right? And so how do people apply to Annapurna, like if you for jobs, like for an assistant director job?
The easiest way we find is people email us a lot.
Okay.
They email us at our website, and then we have a department that kind of looks at that and then starts going through things, because there's only a particular appetite, right? You get all sorts. Everyone wants to become an actor. Everyone wants to become a director. Everyone wants to be a storyteller. So we have to kind of find something which resonates with us in some way or form.
That's also a difficult task because there's a lot of filtering involved.
Yeah, lots.
Because a lot of people do come from a lot of naivety, and they don't really, they may think, okay, I'm a fantastic actor. Like, because
it's just being kind.
Yeah.
I think you have to be kind, because everyone, wherever they are, they're sitting there believing that they can be something good. And so it's just us saying, right now, we're not looking for something like this, if we're not. But it's not to say somebody doesn't have something. That's, it's just
it's something that you kind of have to harness also,
Yes,
no? It's
yes.
not, you may not have it right now, you could have it 1 year from now.
Yes. So why don't you keep? But see, the thing is, we're not equipped to telling someone how to live their lives or how to make their choices.
Yeah.
Right? The only thing we can do is look for what we need and be kind about the rest of the stuff.
Is there something that you wish was told to you before you got into this line of work that you've learned on your own?
I won't say that's specific to the film industry. I will not say that. But I will say that my experience of being female in the film industry has been extremely unique for me. Likewise, it can be something different for someone else. I came into the industry at a time where being a woman, being a young girl behind on the film sets was not something common. My family and friends and all were okay with it, there was a lot of internal navigation I had to do. And it never came into the forefront until very recently, until the words were being given to us. Like, you have gender parity, you have, the words. These words never existed in, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was just like, oh, okay, you just go about it. Now I dress like a man. I will dress like a man and look like the man and work like the man so that you don't stick out. Then one day I was like, okay, I own 20 lipsticks at home. Why don't I wear lipstick to work? Or because if you're behind the camera, you shouldn't wear lipstick because it'll get you attention. And you don't want attention. I was like, oh, okay. And then I realized, I looked down, I was wearing white and white or white and khaki like all the other men on set. And, come a little bit of confidence and things like that. I started experimenting and I realized that I can navigate it. I have learned and developed enough to navigate it.
Have you ever had to put anyone in their place because they were, because of the gender?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And how do you do that in a way without kind of negatively affecting the working relationship?
See, again, there, I will say my privilege has helped. I've kind of been on the, on the upper side parts of the hierarchy. See, that's the funny thing, right? If a man is aggressive, he's a go-getter.
Yeah.
If a woman is aggressive,
She's a problem.
she's a problem.
Yeah.
That's why so many women are problems, right? Because they're problematic women. If if you are asking for something, you're a problem.
Yeah.
So that's all very new. It's all very new, and I think that I don't like to get into the gender discussion so much because I just think that we haven't seen enough women in the workspace. Men haven't seen enough women. Women haven't seen enough women.
Yeah.
So there are problems both sides. But definitely for me personally, I had to navigate that quite a bit because I came in when I was very young. And so I was always working with men who were much older.
That's another thing. Age is also such
Yes,
an important
yes.
thing in the, not important, but age is a lot of how you get treated in
Yeah. So
any
I
line
was
of
the
work with
young
your age.
kid who always worked with older men. So if you see, most of my friends in the industry are much older than me. They're much older than me. It's because we've become friends through the journey.
Yeah.
But they have been older. I think it would have been awkward for them as well. I don't want to say it was awkward only for me. I mean, why is there a little kid sitting? Why is there a girl sitting in our meetings? They'd never seen a girl before. Why is she suddenly here?
But that's also surprising because there were so many female-driven films back in the 60s also, in like Telugu films as well.
Yeah, no, Telugu was very forward that way. But I also too think that we were also telling stories from books. Books were written by women.
Okay.
There were a lot of female authors that films were made on.
Okay.
And I think, strangely so, we had Bhanumati Garu. She was a producer, director, actress. And I feel like somehow that era, the black and white era, just had a lot more nuance. And people were just doing things while there was, patriarchy, all these other things were there. I think people who were doing it and they were breaking their little boundaries all the time.
Yeah.
I think it exists now also. It's just that, again, they categorize us. I get there are about 3 or 4 women who get called for all these gender discussions. I mean, like, the gender discussion has been long over for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I've dealt with it. It's done. And have I faced gender bias? Of course I have.
Yeah.
Who hasn't?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're and if I'm 1 out of 200 women behind set, 200 men on set, I am going to feel some kind of discomfort.
Yeah, yeah. No, fair enough. And I mean, there are a lot of female producers also in the industry right now, and like Telugu films itself that are very, very successful.
Yes. And I think that women as producers, they will be fantastic. If you look even in Hollywood and other industries, you will see that the executive producers and women producers do really well because of their EQ. They have high EQ and they are multitaskers, all the stuff that kills people quicker. It's very helpful for the production of a film.
And even the perspective a woman brings onto a film in terms of being a writer or a director also is very, very different. Like the way women write women and the way men write women is like...
I watch these films sometimes and they say, oh, it's women-centric or it's female forward. And then the woman would have said all the wrong things. And I was like, what was she saying? But then you realize that...
It was written by a man.
Yeah. And then you also realize that people are not ready to hear a woman's perspective yet.
Yeah.
I am actually, I feel that in quarters, we are very open for it. But I do feel that
On a larger scale.
on a larger scale, I don't think the female voice matters as much as it should, and is not given the stage enough.
Your own production and all that. Do you kind of also like try and bring more women onto the projects you work on, or is that not something that you
See, the
necessarily
thing
do?
is, I definitely feel for a working environment as a studio, it's very important to have women in the studio to work, and that's something I actively work towards, saying that there is a reasonable, especially in more administrative roles and more structured roles, to at least have a good proportion of women working.
Yeah.
Because I feel that the environment changes
Yeah.
dramatically when you have women working. On a film set, I just think that we don't have time for that. Whoever's a good worker,
Correct.
I
Then
don't
it's-
think gender should come in there.
It's just your CV and your work ethic.
It's your CV, it's your work ethic, and then there is a certain amount of saying you need to have perspective. If I'm making a film with 10 actresses or 5 actresses and I don't have women on set,
Yeah.
that'd be stupid on my part.
And it'll be so uncomfortable for them.
Yes. So I need to have, and also now I see that a lot of men are asking. They're saying, can we have a couple of ADs? Can we look for women ADs? Because we feel that they change, they tell us certain things that we need to listen here. And I think that's a great change.
Yeah.
That's a great shift.
And it's good that that's happening.
Yeah.
It's important.
I just wish more women would just stop worrying about what someone would think or say and just come and work.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult. It's unfair to say that you shouldn't care about what people think, but women tend to be more sensitive on set. And the moment she's not sensitive, then they'll say, oh, she doesn't feel anything. So,
Yeah, you can't do anything right.
yeah, you can't do anything right.
Whatever you do is going to be scrutinized.
So you
and
just have
criticized.
you have to care a little less.
Yeah. But that also, I think, applies for men also. You have to be, for this kind of work line, I think you have to be a little thick-skinned.
See, that's the funny thing, right? To be creative, you have to be extremely thin-skinned. And then to work with the people on set, you have to be extremely thick-skinned.
Then when you work for box office, also you have to be thick-skinned.
Thick-skinned. So which skin do you keep? Which skin do you take care of?
I think everyone needs borderline personality to sort
Yes,
of to survive.
you do. You do.
Cool. Is there any kind of advice you'd have for people that you who want to break in? Like, if you had to say, do these, like, these are things that you have to do?
I would say 2 months, 3 months is not enough a try. Staying power. But the one thing that keeps people, I've seen people stay, is staying power. Actual staying power. It's not coming in and saying, I would tried this for 2 months, no one gave me work.
What do you mean by staying power?
Resilience.
Okay.
Just stick with it. Stick with it and I feel that today, because things are so quick, people want things to happen quicker. Things don't happen quicker in film.
Yeah.
Because the world is going quicker. But staying power, just to say, I will see this through and not quit.
If it's something that you're passionate about. If it's something you're experimenting with or just trying
Yeah,
out,
see,
then it's
if you're
different.
passionate, if you know you're going to do this, do the grunt work, do the hard works, just stick with it. And somebody will see you. Somebody will notice that you're the person who gets the job done. I've always noticed on a film set, you call out for 1 or 2 names.
Yeah.
And those 1 or 2 names are those people who end up doing things.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. And then you realize that those 1 or 2 become indispensable for that set. Become those 1 or 2. Don't be the other guys.
Yeah. That is actually super important
Yeah,
because
super.
you don't want to be lost in the crowd.
No, and how do you get recognized for what? It's not that you have to be loud. It's not that you have to be, you have to have a phenomenal personality or anything. It's
You have to make the work easier.
get the work done.
Yeah.
You know, and I really think that the appreciation for a person who makes a film set move quicker, the appreciation for that person is unlimited.
That is very true. Yeah. And okay, so we'll now just wrap up. And thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you guys next week.
Thank you.